Folks, welcome to Glendale, California. Joined here today by an iconic musician, record producer, and really an amazing human being, Brent Rademaker. Welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thanks, Jake.
Can you talk about where you're at as it relates to pre versus post production of albums that you are very involved with Curation? Because a lot of times I can listen to modern music and there's so much post production that it sterilizes everything. And I wanted you to talk about the balance of pre and post production, your methodology as it relates to that.
As it relates to Curation, I can say that the startup years, there was a lot of post production because we had a lot of raw recordings that we needed to turn into listenable albums, and that didn't mean sequencing and mastering and artwork, but no remixing for wider audiences and sweetening that way. I think where we're at now is really working with artists and bands that our hands are basically more off. You know, something that really grabs me and wows me without me having to qualify something. Well, if we only did this to it, I think it can be on Curation. Now it's like I'm just interested and we're working with artists that, you know, that we love everything about. When it's handed to us to go into production, you know?
Is it absolutely off the table in modern recording to release something that sounds raw? My favorite records are the rawest records, and I understand that, but it seems like we're so sensitized towards sound. Everyone hears something. Oh, that's not professional. I don't know what the right word is, but is there a fine line there? I mean,
there is. There's a fine line between raw and like what I call like local band sounding. You know, like there's a big resurgence in private press records from the 60s and 70s, and just in rock and in 80s, and pretty much is coming for the 90s too. But there's a big resurgence in private press records because people like the charm that the local studios provided. They really do. There wasn't like everything wasn't done at Cherokee, you know?
Dig.
But there's also stuff that just sounds like shit. You know what I mean? So there's like, and then, you know, the words lo-fi in the 90s really fucked everything up because like there's a difference between lo-fi and like, let's call it like punk, or, you know, like raw, like Stiff Records raw. But when you listen to Stiff Records productions, and they're polished and listenable in their rawness. So the first thing that you talked about, the very first the thing about post-production, it's really a lot to think about, you know?
Well, just because John Simon, the great producer with Seals and Crofts and the band, they worked everything out pre-production, the harmonies, and once the record button went on, you hit. And there really wasn't a lot of, maybe an overdub or two, but you know, there was not because we have the technology now. People feel like, oh, well, if we have it, we can make it even more perfect.
Yeah.
But you know, when the Bee Gees went to Isaac Hayes and said, hey, you know, on that one tune that you did on the one album, there's that crazy sound, and we have this huge mixing board, and we can't get it. How did you do it? And he goes, oh, that was just after a long day. The mic fell and hit the and you know, I mean,
a mistake. Or a happening.
And that to me is the magic. And I understand there's money here and it's not a joke, and you don't want to put out a joke, but sometimes it's those mistakes that make it. There are no mistakes. And I just wonder how much you're able. I mean, you were even talking before about cats that it'll be ready to go and they'll be saying, oh no, I don't want to put this out yet. You know, I mean, how do you work with people how do you get people to get off the side of the cliff and just let it out? Like let their product go out?
You know what? The best way I can do that is by me letting go of the things that I'm holding on too tight for. If I can show them that I'm willing to do that, then when I have an idea, of something that they need to let go of, that they'll do that too.
Can you give an example?
I guess
Maybe from your own career, as a musician.
Yeah,
I mean.
actually, that's the best place to give it, is from my own career. There, just to make it the story short, I guess it would be a Beechwood Sparks. We finished the second album, and we really we were happy with it. We did it ourselves, and it was full of accidents. And we actually kept the producer away because we didn't want it to be overproduced, but we also wanted to. So it was unbalanced. So we didn't like it when we got home. We thought we went too far and fucked it up. So we booked.
Wow.
We thought about it. We asked the label for more money and went back into the studio and flew out of town to go do it. And all we needed to do was just not think so much and just explore a little bit why we just trust it, because like we were just listening to a cassette. It's not the perfect example of letting go, but
Yeah.
it's more of trying to hold it on too much, because we knew we did it right and we loved it. So we weren't really thinking of why it didn't sound good. But
when you talk about the old methodology of record production, to me, it's about feel. I know you weren't. Well, you were listening to it, but it's the feel, and that's what.
There's both. There's feel and there's craft, and you can craft a feel, and you can kill the feel by trying to craft it too much. That's watch the Damn the Torpedoes classic albums documentary. But just for me, I feel I have a lot of feelings about what your first question was.
Riff on it, dude, please.
And I actually don't have too much to say, except for when you know, and if you think you know more than you know, then you're gonna fuck it up. You know what I mean? And that's what I've done, and that's what I've watched people do. And I was like, look, we are just who we are, and if it's good, if it wasn't good, we wouldn't be in front of each other right now.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like, let's use some of that trust. It's like a marriage. Hey, we wouldn't be married. Well, not all the times, but a real relationship, you wouldn't get married if there wasn't some love there. So
it's faith. Faith is part of, have faith in how you came together as collaborators or lovers.
A little bit. I mean, it's a weird thing to say. It probably doesn't fucking mean anything, but it's the craft of. I just had a really long conversation with somebody who I think made 3 of the most amazingly studio crafted records, and this artist David Werner.
Oh my God!
Put out 3 records in the '70s. If you follow me on Instagram, it's no secret that I'm obsessed. But talking with him for 2 hours, the one thing, there was never, even when I had specific questions about certain parts, he didn't really answer it, because it was all just part of the process, and that was enough. He didn't go back, we labored over that for too long, because in his mind, what I was telling him was I loved everything.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter if the record sold 2 records or 2 million, or if he liked it at the time and thought it was like, let's release this. That all didn't matter all these years later in 2021 from, the 70s. And he was just happy to hear that somebody appreciated it. And also really proud of it, and which he should be, because it's amazing. But it's like his music is not something that you could go into the studio unless your band was like pre-production, like basically arranged and like a conductor. they couldn't have made those records that way. They're not live records. There's live feels, but they did what they were early on in what I guess Ron Nevinson was the first producer of his first album, or maybe it was the second album. But he worked with these great producers who.
What was he on? He was on Epic later, but what was the
RCA?
RCA.
Yeah, he was signed at a young. He's like, his story should be told. I think a documentary is worth it, or a book, because his tale. It's no kind of precautionary tale about rock and roll. It is the story of what happens when you're young and you get into rock and roll and you write for other people, or you get involved with somebody who makes records. And everything's fine.
Right.
But David's story is like, it's got everything. The music has everything to me that tells the tale of rock and roll, of somebody who's my age, who grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I mean, I guess I'm still growing up, but
You never stopped growing.
you know, but it's really when I kind of came of age, even though I didn't discover his music till many years later.
Do you think that his stuff needs to be reissued in order for the story to
Absolutely.
be told?
I mean,
or maybe it will come after. I don't know.
Not in a
Not in a wankish way.
In like a cookie cutter way. There's like, Curation should do it, because we haven't done a reissue before.
Werner. Yeah, let's do it, man.
David, I know. Please, no. I mean, he knows. He calls my.
Does he have any control of that? I mean,
he was smart when he
got all his publishing.
Well, he became a really big songwriter afterwards.
Sure.
So he knew the story about it. He knew the value in publishing. But what he did was, when he got signed to Epic, was he took his advance money and bought his 2 albums from RCA.
Wow.
And that was so smart.
Because it was so economical at that time.
The reason that David Werner hasn't been reissued is because he has the one thing that's really lacking in rock and roll. He has brains. He is really smart, and it's an emotional kind of smart. It's not a business guarded. It's just like smart about who he is as an artist. And spending the time I have talking to him.
Well, let's break that down. So you're not talking about bean counters per se, or people that are overemphasizing the economic part of it, but it's just advocating for your art.
Yeah,
and he has brains for that. It's not in the messages in the songs. It's merely about advocating for being an artist and advocating for your work. He jumped in at a time when he bought those albums when they were pretty affordable, even though he had an advance.
Yeah,
and now they were hits.
It was a lot of money. It was a lot, even for back then. It was a lot of money, and I think it was because he wanted to own. I can't speak for him, but I know he saw the value in them, but it was more about like, that was my statement. That's what I'm never going to make another statement at 17, 18, and 19 years old again. And this and a lot of people didn't hear it, and maybe I want to be in control of how they hear it later. Sometimes people's time comes, Chris Bell and I'm sure you have more examples than I do. That's just the one I can think of.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
Sometimes, Big Star, your time finally comes, and all those people who traded your records, it finally reaches the masses, the ears. I think David's music is right.
His sauce
now.
is still simmering in the pan. It hasn't boiled over yet, where it's too. Once you haven't,
It did with the glam fans, who his first album had a lot of glam leanings. There's some, there is. It doesn't sound anything like David Bowie at all, but I think there's. He was definitely doing a great. He's from Pittsburgh, so he was doing a great version of of English rock and roll from the late '60s and the '70s, and some of that was glam, but called glam. But shoot, he grew up on soul music and R&B and the early days of rock and roll, real rock and roll, and it's just.
Well, can I ask you though about like?
Yeah, because I don't want to spend too much time talking about.
I want you to talk about.
I don't want to speak for him. But I do think that anybody watching this, reach out, find his records. If you like rock and roll, and if you like the kind of music that you kind of think about when you think of me and Curation.
Wow, Highland Park Record Shop, right? What's the name of that? That they have a whole section on him now.
Oh yeah, Arroyo Records. They I popped in there the other day, and his albums were right up front in the W section.
I love it.
And that's rad because it's he's I love glam rock and bubblegum. You can tell by the New Gospel Beach EP, but I don't like the novelty aspect of it. I think David Werner is not that kind of artist. He's just sometimes I've had people hear parts of his songs and say, what is this Tom Petty meets Andrew Lloyd Webber? The fact that they say Tom Petty when it has nothing to do with Southern rock, but just like a guy who grew up loving the Kinks, like Tom did, and David obviously does, and they love the Who and the Kinks and the Stones, like the early Stones. You know what I mean? It's that's who's feeding us all of our. Not everybody's a Graham Parsons, where they became a country music study and you didn't know what they were listening to before that. A lot of probably R&B and stuff and.
I wanted to ask you about, just as an artist, a lot of people, with Neely, a lot of people said that Neil Casal, why didn't they reissue his stuff, his earlier stuff? Why is it coming out after he passed away? But I think part of it's the artist. It's a different. Sometimes you get turned off by your art, and I just wanted you to reflect on your own career. And is there stuff that is cringeworthy that only you feel is cringeworthy? Because I think that people were saying, well, I remember
there's a shitload of it,
yeah.
but I don't think it's. But with Neil,
what in his case,
it wasn't. I think Neil had a lot in common with David Werner, where he knew that it was. Excuse me, that it was that there was a lot of merit to it and a lot of quality and I don't mean value in record sales. I just meant he knew that it was real music and real and something. Whereas if you talk about the stuff that I'm involved with and my stuff, it's not cringeworthy. I actually like most of it, but it's a different kind of thing. It's not. I don't hear it the way I hear Neil Casal or David Werner, where it's just really good classic songwriting. Darren and I were just two brothers, and everything was about a band. Never about the song. Even though they were songs, and we wrote songs, and they all meant something, and they're better than most people's fucking songs, in my opinion.
Yeah.
A lot of them were bass lines that became a song because all we did was play together.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like Darren sat around and strummed this masterpiece and would bring it to us, and then we'd have to produce it. It was more like we'd get together and there was an idea and we'd spark it into something, and that's where we came from. We had grown up playing Chicago and Elton John, and we knew we could never do that kind of arranging. And that's another thing about the David Werner music. The arrangements are world class.
No, do we know who the arranger is?
He's co-producer and the arranger of everything. And it's
wow.
He can say more in 3 songs in 6.5 minutes than most bands can say in one 9-minute song. And I don't mean say something. I just mean the moods, the feels, the things that rock and roll does for you. But Darren and I, we didn't come from that world. We came from that world, but we knew we couldn't do it. So our heroes at the time felt really like do music that's a reflection of what you are as you're standing in the.
Well, that's no, it's
or whatever.
It's playing,
and it doesn't stand up throughout time, because you have to have like Echo and the Bunnymen did the same kind of music, but they had these incredible songs, and then they also had this persona where it's like, oh my God, you have Ian McCulloch and you have this band, and you know, we were like a mini version of that, and like those personalities have to be big, you know. And another artist that we really liked was Julian Cope and the Teardrop Explodes, and just read his books, not just his book about his rock and roll life, but his book about krautrock, or his book about the modern antiquarian, the whole Stones and everything. And we're not that, we're different. So that's what makes it kind of like, that's what makes us look back at our, or at least makes me look back at our catalog and just it's there to hear, but it's not worth any kind of big reissues.
Well, I mean, that's not what it's about anyway. It's part of it's like, how do you feel that you have grown in wearing all these different hats? You're somebody that seems to, one reason you have a lot of street cred is because you're trying to wear 8 different hats like a lot of people, and you're doing it. Although I think you probably didn't always know what you were doing. No. You're trying to do the best you can.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you learned to juggle all of this and feel and get by and get a competent artist? Because I didn't. I only learned it when I quit music for a while and started working. So you had to go off the bandstand.
Yeah. So, and only now through working for 2 design firms and 1 big box retailer and an art gallery actually, where I really learned a lot. Where I learned that the people who started those companies took a dream from just right here and built it into something, and they didn't have anything different than I have. But I just needed to learn how to use what I have. Use it isn't a good word, but I needed to learn how to do it right, because I had done it wrong and still had some success our whole life.
That's a fascinating thing. When you do it wrong and you have success, then you think you're doing it right.
Yeah, well, of course. And you see, that's why I've got some artists who, like, probably when they see my name come up on their phone, they probably, oh, I don't want to talk to him now because he's just going to say I'm doing it wrong. You know?
I think people, that's the other part of it. I was asking.
But I mean in a good way.
No, but I also think that, like, I asked Jared Madsen last night, like, what has been well, first of all, taking criticism is one thing, but what is the best critical feedback you've gotten? And he said, he brought up an example, but he said, not a lot. And I just wonder what's the best critical advice you've gotten that maybe that you've taken to heart and tried to improve on in any facet of music because... I mean, listen,
that's a great question.
Yeah, because I think also, like...
People have been scared to criticize me.
I think, but it's not just you. It's in general that they'll either write a fluff piece, but they won't really come, and I'm going to try to think of what the criticism was, but it was, oh, you know what it was? They were like, it was before they met Britt from Folk Yeah, and they were like playing one venue, and they'd have a bunch of people there, but then they'd be wanting to play some other venue.
Yeah.
And then like Britt's like, well, why you got to stay? You just had a huge audience. They didn't even know they were alienating people. You know, they were just in their own bubble. But hearing that, he's like, why don't you guys just work with me? Anyway.
No, I hear that.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and sometimes.
Man, it's too long. I mean.
What's at the top? What's on the top of the brain though? What's one thing that comes to mind?
It's more an attitude.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you've already got there, and now just like, don't be so quick to say no. Another thing is, even though I'm wearing a lot of hats now,
wearing a Grateful Shred hat right now. Yeah, you're wearing a lot of. I mean, you are, man.
Well, my hair's out of control.
Right.
And I love the shred.
Yeah, man.
But
Shredful.
the thing about me as an artist, I'm not worried about how I'm not so worried about how curation and all the artists I'm helping. I don't care how that reflects on me as an artist anymore, because I'm past my expiration date in my own mind. I still like to do it, and I love to do it, and I'm glad people still listen. That makes me really happy, and I'm playing with younger people, and I'm giving them an opportunity to be on stage with an older guy. But I think the some of the things that people said in the past were like, and not always. Like, say we had our band Further, and we came up with we would record the music ourselves. We would even go down and master it ourselves, and then do the artwork ourselves. And if it came together, the label we were doing it for would be like, "Oh, it was great, thank you." But if there was something that they didn't like, they would be like, "Hey, could you change this?" We go, "No." And then I look at it now, and I was like, God, we fought over that. Like, it's some stupid like the same thing. Like you it's not about picking your battles is like the phrase learning from your mistakes. I don't believe in those, but I do believe in what they stand for. I just think they're too specific. But
did you ever get to a point where?
Probably yes, and everything.
Well, I'm just saying, you get to a point where all of a sudden somebody said, maybe not with Further, but they would make a suggestion, and you were, it's like a dog leash, where you were ready to say no, but then you stopped and at least took it in, and maybe even agreed with them after a while.
Only now. Oh, I think. Beechwood Sparks. The
Really?
Tarnished Gold. The final studio the final album that we recorded. I went into that with with all those knee jerks and all those ready to say no's, and that way. But it made me a little annoying, because I was telling everybody else, "Hey, don't say no." Hey, just
right.
Hey, if I want to do it, then that's, and you know what, me doing it, and pretty much following like Chris Gunst, who he had the line in the very first or second Beechwood Sparks song ever, "Just take it as it comes, don't worry so much, won't you?" I just said I felt like it was my own invention to go into this record, and not just bring everything from the heart, bring it for real, and if I did have anything to say it. But really keep that to the real things, and not just the controlling things, and not try to the thing about music is, you can come into a project, and if you've been listening to the band and you think you're going to make the record sound like Big Pink, and you're in a studio that has none of the same equipment, or playing with a drummer that doesn't play like Levon or Richard Manuel, then you're fucked. So I went into it with no preconceptions, and and that was the time when I let go, and it was a success. It was a great record. It sold a lot. It's listenable. I listened to it for 3 months straight with Kathleen in Florida, so it was a success, because I rarely listen to the music while we make it, until after we kind of.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. You were listening to it in the real time.
Oh, I was listening to it in Florida like I wasn't even in the band.
Wow.
It was great, and it was cool, because we just showed up and played, and I didn't give the tape anything that I didn't want on there. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And I couldn't. There was a couple times when I told the other guys, I remember Dan Horn. It was his first time recording pedal steel, and. With us, probably in general, but I remember there was, we were used to one thing, and I think we all just said hey, just let's let it flow.
Flow.
Yeah, and it did, and since that was a success, I think I try to tell people but I have a million more examples of where I said no and fought over things and for nothing, and actually things that didn't work out, and maybe I look back on it now and think that they were right.
Well, but did it ever cost an entire project to fall apart, or is it
yes.
just? Yes. Okay. That
bands,
so it's hard to get over that.
friendships,
Yeah.
relationships with like people. Okay, for all the artists out there or all the kids in bands, if you're a girl in her room with a guitar and somebody wants to like work with you, I remember. Well, I was going to say,
Yeah.
you know, if somebody's coming to you, if you want to do it yourself, do it yourself. If a label has resources to help you and distribution to get your records in the stores and more you know, just like the passion to help a band make it or an artist make it, you know, then certainly don't bend over backwards and let them run roughshod over you, but you're already there. They already like you. So anything they say, it's worth listening to. It's not always worth doing.
But don't outrightly dismiss it.
No, not at all. It's like the last couple things that I've been dealing with just on the label with there was specifically this new band that we signed that I love, write the best songs and are the coolest kids. This band, the Uni Boys. They're from a town outside of Laguna Beach, but I think some living up here in Hollywood.
Power pop group.
Yeah, well, rock and roll.
Rock and roll, that's right.
We put together the 7-inch, and they wanted to change the B-side after we had already kind of got it ready, mastered it and stuff. And you know, that's like a fireable offense for the old B-Rad. And I just went like, oh, sure, what's the one you want? Oh, cool. And
wow.
And they submitted the artwork. We switched out the mastering, and god dang, if last time I didn't listen to it, I was like, this is even a fucking better B-side, because now the B-side gets to go on the album. So it's a win-win, because I didn't just say, no, you can't do that because you whatever. But we worked together. They didn't just say, we're doing it or else. They said, what do you think? And I said, I think that if you're happy, I'm happy, you know? As long as we get everything to come out. The worst thing to do is not put something out that you record, you know, unless it just like totally sucks.
Right.
And that's on you to go in the studio and make something shitty because, you know.
Well, I think there's also, I mean, that there are also, you know, people are brought in, and it's good to respect the strengths they bring to the table, and you can focus a little bit more on just the. I just really feel like a lot of the artists, even Werner maybe to a degree, although it sounds like he did. I mean, there were other accompanist playing on the album. He didn't play all the instruments, did he?
He had a great band.
I'm wondering who the.
Mark Doyle, who lives in. He still lives in Syracuse. He was a Syracuse musician in a band called Juke and Bone.
Oh my God!
Do you know that band?
No, I mean, I just upstate New York. I mean,
they were like a, you know, kind of a hard rockin', blues-based rock band that
like a King Harvest kind of band, or
God,
is it from that era?
72?
Yeah.
So I think that David knew of Mark. They hooked up.
Yeah.
They were out to create something new. They were so ahead of their time. All the articles for David Warner's third album are always like, and this is not just applying to him. This applies to a lot of musicians, like Neil.
Yeah.
It seems like blah, blah, blah's time is finally coming. We're all catching up to them. So I didn't finish the thing about Neil when you asked, but if people can remember the question about like Neil and what he thought about his solo work, he wasn't crazy about some of the productions and some of the songs, but that was because he was really close to it. But not the productions. No, that's not. Once he started to move in circles where the music was a little weirder, he wanted his stuff to be a little weird, but he wasn't a weird artist. He was a songwriter. So he was a little hesitant.
He was torn.
Yeah.
He was torn.
He always wanted it to be better, and he did want to make, you know, thank God that he got in with people like Jim Scott and Michael Deming, who said like, yeah, Neil, and Tom Monahan. And it was like, okay, Neil, we can make a trendy record that sounds like the band you're listening to now, Beachwood Sparks, or we can make a record that sounds like you, and we'll use some of my cats and your cats, and we'll make a killer record. Well, that's fine, because it's about the songs with Neil, and when people hear what's about to hit them, with the Highway Butterfly tribute record. 5 vinyl records of Neil Casal songs done by what I think is like
the best roster of cats.
I really do. There are a couple people I wish were on there, but to be honest, if you have like His Golden Messenger and Aaron Lee Tostian like handling like what is the new kind of Americana or the new singer-songwriter, and then you have Bob Weir and Shooter and
Leslie Mendelsohn, all these,
all of Neil's peers, who a ton of them, just having Kenny Roby and all those, all the people from the Neil thing, but and more. It's having them do his songs, including what we did for him. It just showed you that he was one badass songwriter. He was the real deal because his songs were actually songs. They weren't made up he didn't write the lyrics the day before they went in the studio and had all this cool music. He didn't have a bass line that was going to drive the song. He had songs, and they were saying stuff about like we all know Neil as this lovable, every woman, every man, every person cat, and he
generous, total,
generous,
open.
But then when you hear somebody else, when you detach that persona to the songs and you hear somebody else sing the songs, you're like, whoa, this guy was and always will be somebody that deals with all the same things and maybe a little more than we face.
And able to put it in a song form, very compelling. Yeah, that's
incredible. I mean, it doesn't even matter if they weren't in songs. If he just wrote what he was, if he just wrote those themes, those ideas, that love on a piece of paper, or the reflection of who he was, it's like, whoa, that's the way you saw yourself. That's why I never, I talked to Gary Waldman recently, his manager, best friend, knows everything about Neil. He's Neil's historian, and he's an incredible person.
Great cat.
I made the mistake of saying that Neil didn't like all of his solo records, and that's not what I meant. I think I was trying to say that I think Neil was bummed that people missed the connection on some of the songs because of the way they were presented. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. I just also think that sometimes, you can listen back to, I can listen back to my first couple of years on the radio. Again, this isn't I was doing so many shows. It wasn't like releasing a record that you want to be high quality, so to speak. But I can hear my voice.
Oh yeah.
And I can hear how cringeworthy it is. I'm talking to Jack DeJeanette, and I'm trying to get the question out, and he's cool enough to work with me until I get it out. But it's painful and I just feel like think, especially the aesthetics that we've been talking about for the last 40 minutes.
It depends on the question you were answering and the sound of your voice. It's.
But I'm just saying, where he had started to get into with weirder music.
Yeah.
As he had evolved, you listen back and you're like, this is so minor. In some ways, if you're hard, we know he was a hard critic of himself.
Yeah.
He said, this is so minor league. You don't even want to, even though obviously there was life within that. It's hard sometimes for the artists themselves to go back and not just appreciate, but even accept it.
Yeah, well, my thing, something that Curation, actually sitting right here in the same spot when Matt and Kelly and I talked about doing a label, I said, first artist is going to be Neil Casal, because the idea is to try to put the new Neil together with the old Neil and make him happy. And
make him complete.
Yeah, and that was funny because that's like a good idea. That's not controlling. That's not being like.
It's called fusion. It's called fusion.
It's not like I was thinking about this girl, good friend of mine, Mia Joy Todd. I don't know if this is.
May not be relevant,
she played. Chris Gunst had her come up and play on his radio show on KXLU out of Loyola.
Oh yeah.
And I happened to hear it, and I asked if we could record her, out in at the Space Shed with Josh. Josh and I set up mics. Mia didn't have any say in anything. She just showed up and sang her heart out and played. We set up the mics. We had one in the top corner of the room, and we wanted to have we had some ideas, and we were probably really stoned, but it was fun. We recorded it. It came out good. I put it out as one of my very first full-length releases by a further artist. And she ended up having a great career and still just put out a brand new album a couple weeks ago. And one of her albums ended up on Sony. And I remember hearing it and going like, oh, I know this. She just kind of got put through the machine, like all the stuff that all these comments that I'm making about helping and suggesting, there is a line drawn. If you get put in the studio with a person who has a sound, and then you have to be that, and then there's that stupid snare drum sound, and it's like, Mia's not that artist. She's not a snare drum sound artist. She's a chanteuse. She's a singer. She's a new Joni Mitchell. To record her voice great, and
right.
It was it's just like with Darren and I. How come the thing that was on the biggest platform is the thing that nobody hears or nobody knows about? Why is it the thing that was released from a bedroom is the one that recorded in a garage was the thing that everybody loves? Why, how come the stuff that cost him $500,000 nobody wants to listen to?
Yeah, dude, the other part is this. Taj Mahal said it too. He knew great artists, and once they got plugged into the machine, it was impossible to unplug them. They couldn't revert back to what that. Once you get sucked into that, it's hard to unplug.
And do you think somebody I think when I was talking to David Werner, I think what I was getting was, they loved him, but he wasn't like back off, I'm in control. But he definitely, he co-produced his records, which isn't, it's not rare. But I think
he definitely had a final say in a lot of the stuff.
I'm sure, and and I think when it came to his fourth album, when he gave what was supposed to be the single for his album, he gave it over to Billy Idol to do a version. And I think the record company was, because those record companies, it's not just Brent, Matt Kelly, Kim,
right.
And Michael and Brian. It's not just us, and basically it's not just me. Those record companies you've got the head of alternative marketing, you've got the head of publicity, you've got the vice president, you've got the president, you've got the A&R man. They all have their ideas about you. And if one of them comes, like David Geffen said, Shadowland, interesting, change your name. Bands with land in it never make it. I don't know why we just didn't change our name, because I didn't give a fuck about that name either to Darren. Whereas we kind of liked it, but it was very much we needed a name because we were playing a gig, and we came up with the name. It was we could have changed it. And
wait, what did he said? He said bands with what name never make it?
Land never make it. And I was like, that's David Geffen. He knows. He's not trying to say. I mean, of course, he probably could have said, you guys could make a better fucking album than this piece of shit. But he didn't. But somebody came in and said it. This guy, Mark Cates, who was the head of alternative marketing, and he was working with, Sonic Youth, but other bands, too. It wasn't he didn't want us to sound like that.
Sure.
He just heard our record and said, I thought you guys were like a Birdsey kind of Laurel Canyon new LA band. What is this? This sounds like a bad rock record.
You're like, dude, we're from the west coast of Florida, bro.
Well, yeah.
I mean, dude, we're not.
No, but it didn't sound like what we were was what they brought us to the label.
Interesting.
But what did I say immediately? Fuck you. And I went running out of the room. I should have went like, what? What do you mean? Tell me what you mean. And then he would have said, hey, we signed you because you guys were like the new Buffalo Springfield, and now this is basically almost hard rock. It was pre-grunge, and he just said it's very aggressive, and you guys didn't seem like that kind of band. You were more romantic, and this isn't.
You're speculating what he would say, or he did actually?
I heard him say that.
Okay,
stuff.
so yeah.
I just shut it out for all these years.
I like that you're able to get it out now. Yeah.
I actually got up and walked out, and I was like insulting the guy,
right.
His looks and who he was, and because I was young and cool, and he was like. He probably was young too, but he just looked older. But I was just a dick. I showed him no respect, and he was absolutely. He was right in the fact that we made something that wasn't. It was totally kind of different than what brought us to the label.
Right.
We were kind of skipping. We were signed for many years before we even got to put the record out, and I think it was like a fatigue thing where we were on the label for about 2.5 years before we even got to go to record the album. And by then, because it was like, yeah, you just need to write one more song, and by then I think it was just like, finally, just get this fucking thing over with.
Before my phone battery dies, I just wanted to ask you about. You've obviously. I've just been spending time here at Curation Studios.
We have power here.
I mean, it's grand.
Look right there.
Yeah, no, I have my own issues with the phone, but can you just talk about? It's kind of
pointing to an outlet coming out of a tree.
Like what have you been? How have you? Has your perspective changed? Have you? I mean, even just you just said the point where you've obviously evolved to the point of maturity levels where you're not making fun of people superficially and walking out of rooms and doing things that are shooting yourself in the foot. But I mean, like with COVID, you know, all the guys, Benji, Farmer, Horn. I mean, the list goes on. I don't want to leave anybody out. But you guys like want to perform for people.
Yeah.
Like you want to, whether it's 75 cats in an upholstered sewer somewhere in Europe, and that's an amazing raging time, or a 200-seater or whatever, or Henry Miller. I mean,
a 70-seater.
Damn right. But that was totally taken away from you. And in some ways, for some cats who do a lot of road dogging, you used to, but not so much now, that is their identity. So they lost that for a minute. And and a lot of people were able to kind of just mellow out and relax. But I just wanted to know from you what you grew, where you grew, if it was gratitude, or what was something that got you, how do you feel like you've grown as a human being in this time?
I don't know. I don't know if I have grown. All I know is that all those people you mentioned, when we couldn't play, Dan recorded 2 albums for the label, and had his hand in some other stuff. Benji and Farmer Dave made a record for Curation. I tried to get all my friends in studios and get them doing stuff and do stuff with them. There's other projects too, because I didn't want this disease, or what is it? This
pandemic. Yeah.
To
plague,
this I know, I don't even know what it is. I didn't want it to get in our way.
Totally.
I didn't want I didn't want any of the music and anything we did to be a reflection of what it was, because I only know that, like, the way that it got politicized, like, turns my stomach. Yeah. Because everybody has a heart and care for their fellow man. So making it into something that it isn't, and then all of a sudden, like, what's it going to do to the music business? What's it going to do to the people like us who already had a hard time? You're waxing poetic. No, I mean, I heard today somebody, I mean, already not to go in this direction, but they're talking about, getting money back from China because it came from Wuhan, the lab. So therefore, and so, like, but they were focused on the money. And it's like, I want some money back from Geffen.
Well, and it's also like,
they spent
what about the humanity?
$650,000. I got nothing out of it. My car got ruined because I was the only one with the car. No, could you imagine this? When we were signed, I'm just diverting that.
Yeah, that's fine, dude.
Because you know what? The humanity is, we're gonna.
No, but I like what you said. You had this infrastructure here, and you wanted to, and people kept busy with it. Exactly. Yes. But you also were very inclusive. It wasn't like you were just holed up here wanking it on your own. You brought your friends in.
God, no. That's the main thing, is like
because we know with artists, they need to be occupied and be inspired.
Yes. That's exactly. And I was like, what can I do? It's like, I just, we're not going to, like, I mean, the Beechwood celebrating the 20th anniversary was very cool. And the whole plan was more about us making a new record. And when we didn't get to make that because of COVID, that was hard. And so Chris it totally separated us, and that was something that was going to be not just satisfying for me, like artistically, and it's going to be a big chapter of my life, like
a little bit of closure,
closing,
absolutely,
or just like a dream come true, basically. And the fact that COVID made it so we couldn't do that, I had to find a way not to be bitter over that,
right,
and not be the one that's going to rip off my mask or yell at the TV or tell other people to wear a mask or do whatever. I just don't want to do that. I want to say, like, come to me, come to us, come to what we're doing. Put on the Trevor Bell Jimenez record when you are feeling frustrated with what's going on out there in the world. Like a perfect example, like Trevor and I and Johnny, we all made a pact. We're going to listen to each other and trust each other. Trevor's going to write the songs and play a lot of the instruments. Johnny's going to produce it, and I'm going to kind of like executive produce it and put it out. So the three of us had this trust, and we made an incredible record. Yeah, there made some I made some mistakes during it, and I think maybe they would.
That maybe only you would hear.
Yeah,
I don't think the audience would ever even hear.
No way. I would like the one thing back when you were asking me about what kind of criticism I used to get. It was a different thing than what you're thinking, but I used to have some really close friends, including my wife, saying, "Hey, quit outing yourself. Quit being so down on yourself. What do you?"
The self-deprecation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where does that come from, and where do you think that's getting you?
That's kind of common, actually, but yeah, I mean, it's a kind of not a great trait to have.
I dropped it.
Good.
It was
That's
the
good.
charm wore off. There's only one Lou Barlow, and even he doesn't do it anymore. So I kind of like. I kind of quit. I guess I just was into this like openness, and I wanted everybody to know everything. But with the Trevor record, it came out perfect, and there was a circle, a triangle of trust, and there was a lot more people involved in that. But I think we did the same thing with when I met Dave Schools through Neil, and we recorded the new Farmer Dave and the Wizards of the West record. It was like, you're going to be the producer, you're going to be the band, and I'm going to be the record company. And we all agreed to that going in. They said, we're not going to do this unless we're going to do that.
Stay in your lane.
And we've done it, and it's incredible. It is.
That hasn't come out yet.
No, it's not even mastered yet. Wow. I don't even think the final mixes are in, but it doesn't matter, because you like taking 30 seconds out of a song or putting song 8 to song 1 doesn't change whether it's great or not. It's not going to be that, but we're just working on that kind of
sure,
making it fit on vinyl, getting it to people with short attention spans, and getting it to people with long attention spans. You want everybody to you want to think for everybody when you're doing this. At least like you want to think for yourself. So some days I get a thing and somebody will send me a link, and I'll be like, I'll get through the first song barely. And sometimes
you listen to the whole album for 2 weeks.
100 times, and then all of a sudden it's like track 9, which I hated at first, is my favorite song, and that should have been the single. And
yeah, don't give up too quickly. A lot of acquired taste going on as well.
Oh, I know, but
no, but people will just throw.
No, it's true. But when you're crafting and sequencing a record, you have to think for those people. Or you have to think for yourself in that way. I think you do.
Well, this is the other thing that I was struck by. Do you believe that songs can come in a flood at the last minute? I know Weir called Barlow in '74. Barlow was in Wyoming on the farm. He said, "Yo, we're going into the studio. I need a song. I need it tomorrow."
Yeah.
And Barlow was like, "Well, let me see what
lyrics or
lyrics.
Yeah.
So let me see. Maybe
he had the melody.
Maybe the melody was there. But Barlow wrote, or in that day he went out. He goes, "Let me see what I can do." When he went out, and he wrote the lyrics to "Let It Grow." All right. Now that was the day before, and some cats just cram before the test, and they can just blast stuff out. They're that brilliant. But do you think you mentioned something before about crafting a song? Does it work both ways for you? Can it be a kind of something that just flows out of you?
I've done it both ways. I don't know if it's worked. I think Another Summer of Love by Gospel Beach was...
My daughter's obsessed with that album, by the way. I mean,
cool.
the whole thing is still...
It was an exercise in crafting songs, and
you hit it.
And Let It Burn was more of that. But what we had from Let It Burn was live takes from the floor, whereas
Right.
most of Another Summer of Love was built up like Damn the Torpedoes style, with a few exceptions where we captured live things in the moment. But those were two albums of. Sometimes you record and you're recording under circumstance. Like the very first Gospel Beach album, Pacific Surfline, we were in a studio in Chinatown, me and Neil and Tomo, 2 guitars and drums. And my friend had this great little Neve console and a bunch of microphones, and my friend Scott said, "You want to record?" And yeah, we just laid some shit down and it sounded good. And then we ended up, the band expanded and Jason Soda grew as the guitar player. Jason Soda joined.
Sure.
And we gave him the tapes and said, "Here's 2 guitars and drums. Now let's make a record out of this." So we built it that way. Circumstance allowed it to become a record. Of course, we just made the Jam Jam EP, which was like, when I tell artists not to be so precious about things, but be the artist, and I'm really studying like the 70s, and especially like the Chin Chapman vibe and the bubblegum vibe, and Matt and Kelly are coming and saying they're fans of Gospel Beach, telling me how much they love the last 2 records. And
Wow.
we're friends, and we've been friends forever, so they respect me as an artist, I guess, and I respect them as friends and people and music fans. And they're like, why don't you do this song and this song with your studio situation that you have, because the stuff sounds fucking great. But let's hear what this would sound like, and why don't you like present it in your Gospel Beast fashion? Don't try to copy the productions. You know what I mean? The idea was never to try to make a bubblegum sounding record. It was more about just what would these songs be like in our hands, and it came out so good. It's so good, and it's successful. We sold out of the records, and it's our most listened to thing on the streaming sites, and I know people want to hear like our own songs, but I love it. I love it so much, and it was so fun to do, from the artwork to the
Well, it feels fresh. It feels alive.
and having like getting Don Heffington and Bob Glob.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, because
They were all first takes when were the rhythm tracks laid down first, or they came in later?
Well, no, they were laid down later on bass, but Don and Johnny and I laid the song down together. I played guitar and Don played drums, and Don and Bob came about because of Neil, and it was just more of a, Don Heffington has since passed away, and it's so sad because when we finished those songs that day, and they were magic. The takes, what a pro!
I know.
He just
did a second take for fun.
I'm like, did you listen to that? He goes, yeah, I got to listen to it twice. I know exactly. He's like, I don't even know these songs.
Master.
He's like, I think I heard Gimme Gimme Good Lovin', but I don't know any of these other songs. I definitely don't know Jam Jam, and I definitely don't know Albatross Baby. And he killed it. The fills were exactly like the fills on the record, but maybe not the same fills, but in the same place. So the feel remained. So then Don passes away because this is sad. I mention this because Don said, "Hey, who do you have playing on the next Gospel Beach album? I want to play on like your songs. I want to play on those ones." And I'm like, "You." It's gonna be you.
Wow.
And I remember telling Jim, Jim Scott, I said I got Don and Bob because Jim Scott's. I just saw him the other day, and he just told me the best thing ever. He said, people come to him because he worked with, like mainly Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and they're known for these great sounding drums. And people come to him and they're like, how did you do this record and that record, or I want to do a record with those great sounding drums, and he's like, I just got a 57 and Don Heffington. And that is
well. Then one thing I learned, I just did another interview with Keltner, and he talked about seeing Al Jackson come into the studio to do "Ain't No Sunshine." A lot of people thought Gadsden did that, and Keltner's in the control room, and he thought Jackson was going to bring in some incredible kit.
Yeah.
some hippie brings in a kit from SIR.
Uh-huh.
Al comes in a couple minutes later, doesn't put a key to it, no keys to any drum.
Yeah.
It came out of him. So with Heffington, with these, the point is it
Yeah.
comes out of you.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like you can get so amped up about tech.
And this is like Jim Scott, who's got platinum albums.
Ferroni
on
was
the
involved in a
wall.
lot of that petty stuff too. Yeah.
Well, but I'm just saying the stuff that Jim does that's not petty. He's like, they're like, the Neil Casal drum sound. It's Don Heffington in the '57. You know, all these different records that he makes for a lot of singer songwriters, where his role as a producer is to bring in a rhythm section and a lead guitar player and a piano player. And what they did for the Neil Casal tribute, Dave Schools and Jim Scott, they just called in Dave played a lot of the bass on it, which if you got Schools playing bass, you're stoked. And Don played a lot on it. I mean, these are the legends. Like,
No, we are just give a shout out to your brother. Because the phone's gonna die. Just
okay. Shout out to my brother. Shout out to my mother. Shout out to my father, and shout out to you out there. And curation to the world.
Yo, man, thank you for making the world a better place through human interaction and music. I think everybody's indebted to you for that.
You're welcome.
And it's unquantifiable.
Thank you. Next time we can talk more about the curation artists.
We'll do it again.
Okay.
Brent Rademaker, it's an honor. Thank you so much. This is
Bye,
the Jake
Jake.
Feinberg Show. See you later.